The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'll be joined by Scott Hamilton of United Chemical. We're going to go over the new Treat², which is a new formula for the Treat product. We're also going to touch on sodium bromide and using it in your pool. And Scott will address any concerns you may have of using sodium bromide and the safety of the product itself. And then at the end of the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the Hamilton Index, which was created by Scott's father, Jock Hamilton. And we'll go over some of the benefits of using the Hamilton Index in areas of the country like California where you have really hard water. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Also receive priority service, enhanced rebate programs, a discount on your general liability insurance through Spa, a discount on your pool routing software through Skimmer, and an opportunity to co-brand with Leslie's on your social media, website, truck, and more. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. So I'm joined today by Scott Hamilton of United Chemical, and he is the CEO over there. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great. This is my first podcast, so thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited.
And I was going to tell the listeners you're not wearing your tuxedo like at the show, so...
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if I can fit in that tuxedo anymore after COVID, so it's been a rough 6 months.
Yeah, any of the pool guys go to the shows, they'll see your booth and you'll see your tuxedos. And I guess the first question I have for you, and this is something that people are wondering, you sell multiple chemicals there, but you're called United Chemical. Is there a reason why your name doesn't have a plural?
United Chemicals? You know, that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I never got to ask my dad, Jock, who founded the company, why he chose that particular name. I think he just thought it sounded better if it was like United Chemical.
Yeah. It has a better ring to it, and it sounds more specific, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. Well, originally when he developed the company, or founded the company in the early 70s, he was trying to develop a new way of producing dry cyanuric acid. So maybe that's what it was.
Okay.
That's how it got its start. So
it's been around for a long time, obviously, since you mentioned the 70s. And what's your history with the company?
So, like I mentioned, my father founded it in, I believe it was 72, and he started the company. He was a pool guy, and he started the company to produce dry cyanuric acid using microwave radiation. That was like the big thing he was trying to do. Turned out it wasn't very economical, and then it became the company it is today. Most people know about it when it started developing products in the early 80s, like with Treat. So I grew up around the company. Since I can remember, I've always been around the plant over at Peru, and just basically running around there as a kid. Did a lot of summer jobs at the company. Basically would come in and talk to my dad and sit in his office and listen to him answering tech calls all the time. So when he passed away, my mom inherited the company, and then I became CEO when I got a little bit older, a little bit more mature. Yeah, so that's kind of my background with it. I'm a second-gen chemistry nerd, I guess you could say.
And your dad's name is the moniker for the Hamilton Index. We'll address that a little bit later. And let's just jump into one of the reasons why I brought you on here is the Treat, which a lot of the pool professionals and homeowners alike will recognize, has been around for a very long time, and now it has like a little 2 next to it.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's a reformulated product because you've adjusted the name. And we all know that one of the drawbacks of the sodium bromide product is when you use it, it kind of destroys or eats the chlorine level. I don't know what's the best scientific way to say that. The chlorine drops pretty dramatically. So the Treat², you want to go over the new formula and why it's more advanced than the standard Treat that you had on the market for such a long time?
Yeah, so the Treat was, I believe, the first like big commercial success that United Chemical had, and it came out probably early 80s, I want to say, maybe late 70s. Back when it came out, no one even knew about sodium bromide. It was kind of the first company to to use that, at least in a branded way, and formalized kind of algicide. Then the secret got out. Everybody knew it was sodium bromide. Well, at least they knew it contained that. They don't know the other ingredients. And like you mentioned, one of the big problems was even though it would kill the algae, a lot of times if you added either a little too much or just not enough chlorine, sometimes you would have, chlorine loss. You would go the next day and you wouldn't see any chlorine reading in the pool. So that's been a long time problem, and something that we've heard customers address, and we did a lot of experimentation, and we actually found a couple ingredients we could add to it that would solve that problem. So the next day when you go to the pool after doing the yellow treat and the shock, suddenly now you still have a chlorine reading. Kind of a added benefit that we weren't even planning on is that it makes it stronger. It's significantly stronger now too. So even if it's a much worse algae bloom, not just kind of like your light mustard algae growth, maybe a little bit on the walls, but something much more substantial, suddenly now you can clear it out all in one shot. So we were very excited about it. We would have brought it out sooner, but with pesticides like yellow treat and algicides like that, the the EPA regulation is kind of long, so it takes probably about a year or more to get a product to market. So, but we're excited it's finally here, and we can't wait for people to try it.
And it's available right now this season.
Yeah, it's available right now. It's started to get out to distribution branches. It's not at all of them quite yet. So what you can do is you can actually go to our website, go to the pro section, and not only get a sample of it just to try and see how it compares, but you can actually opt in, and we'll notify you if you tell us the branch you're planning on getting it through. We can actually notify you if they have it in stock.
And that's unitedchemical.com.
That's correct, unitedchemical.com. And there's a little for business site on there that you can
Okay,
visit.
perfect. And we're talking about sodium bromide, and I think we should address one of the things that you hear about a lot in the industry, and that is that it creates a bromine bank that is not an algicide that you would want to use in a pool, and it has side effects that
Right.
are too negative to use as a product. And how would you address that, since this is the product that you make, of course?
Yeah, and so the most common thing you hear about people is, or hear about critics of sodium bromide is that, oh, it will convert the pool to bromine. That's a common kind of objection to it. I don't particularly like using that term because it sounds very official. It sounds like, oh, you're going to convert the pool to bromine, so suddenly that you can't use chlorine in the pool, because that's kind of the connotation behind it, but that's not at all true. So that's something that a lot of our competitors have started saying if they don't offer a sodium bromide product, which is fewer and fewer, more and more people or more companies offer it. But yeah, so it's kind of a half truth. When you add sodium bromide to a pool, yes, you are basically reacting with chlorine and using some of that chemical energy to produce quote unquote bromine. And then the bromine acts like chlorine and produces hypobromous acid. And hypobromous acid is better because it's more of it is active at a given range of pH. So it is in many ways a superior algicide, or compared to chlorine. At the same time, though, it's not like there's no chlorine in the pool. When you add the ratios that we're talking about, so like with yellow treat, you're adding about a capful. Capful is about 5 ounces, and about if you're using the old yellow treat, that's about 88%. There's a little bit less actually in the newer ones to make room for the other ingredients, but it's a very small amount of bromine that you're adding. And then you look at how much you typically shock with. Well, for 5 ounces per 10,000 gallons, you're looking at, something like 2 gallons of chlorine. So you're really not adding enough to convert all chlorine to bromine. Otherwise, I tell people, well, if that's true, then and the bromine doesn't go anywhere, then you would never have to add another algicide, right? I mean, basically, it would be there forever. So that, and also bromine burns off. It burns off in a pool. It can't be stabilized. Does it burn off slower than chlorine? It will burn off slower than unstabilized chlorine. So when you add all those factors up, no, you're not really converting the pool per se to bromine. I read somewhere the term a hybrid pool, where you kind of have both working at the same time, and I think that's a little bit more chemically accurate, and it's also a little bit more representative of what's going on in the pool. It's kind of a half truth. It's something, unfortunately, in our industry that they'll scratch the surface on the chemistry until they get the answer they want, and then they'll just run with it. So I tell people not to worry. We got, probably most of your listeners use sodium bromide, and they can still use chlorine in their pool, and their pool is fine. So
Yeah, the EPA wouldn't register it if it was going to be a harmful product, right?
yeah, there's a couple companies that compete with sodium bromide have over the years tried to create this big doubt about sodium bromide being safe. Particularly, they talk about bromates. I don't know how much in depth you want me to go into this, but basically there was a study on what's called potassium bromate. It's like an ingredient they use in food for leavening. It's like a leavening agent, and they were feeding a lot of it to rats. The rats got renal failure, so basically kidney damage. They looked at it and they didn't know why, but they said, okay, well, potassium's in everything, so it must be the bromide part or bromate part that's doing the damage. That became something that you didn't want potassium bromate in your bread. That's kind of where that started. And then Arch Chemical submitted to the EPA a study where I use the term study loosely. They sent the EPA a letter stating that if you added a 20 times dose of a sodium bromide product, they didn't name us, but I'm pretty sure they were referring to Yellow Treat, and added a 20-time dose or more, it's been a while since I read the report, of chlorine, then you might get bromate. And they didn't actually do it and test it. They did a simulation of it. They sent it to the EPA, and the EPA got an internal memo, and then they did a study, and they said, well, that's not realistic. Who's going to put like 20 gallons of chlorine in a pool that's 10,000 gallons? You already have trouble there. You can stop there. That's the bad part. And then they said, okay, so let's look at it realistically in dosing. And they went to the directions, and it's 5 ounces per that, the amount of chlorine they guessed. And they did this. The way the EPA assesses risks is they take all this information, and then they do a risk assessment. They say, okay, let's say that it does produce bromate at that ratio, and the average person, or even someone who's like an athlete who swims a lot, ends up swallowing this amount of water. What's over their lifetime? What's their risk level? And then for children, they times it by 10 or more. And basically, they looked at all the data and said, assuming all these things are correct, there's very, very little chance of there being any health risk to it. And again, and like you mentioned, if there was a real big health risk, why would they have, just approved a new product within the last 12 months? So, yeah, I actually talked to one of the companies, Arenda, and the guy was asking me about their CEO, and I explained all that to them as well, because they were, talking about that and how that it might be something dangerous, and I said no, it's not dangerous at all, especially when you actually read the report. It's perfectly safe. I grew up swimming in a sodium bromide pool. Actually, at our company facilities, we had 2 test pools, And when I was a kid, I would go swimming, and then my dad would come out, and he would kind of watch us and say, "Hey, how's the water feel?" And we'd say, "Great." And then he'd go, "Oh, okay," and then walk away. And it wasn't until later I realized I was a guinea pig for my dad. So he's like, didn't kill the boy, so I guess what we're putting in the pool is okay. So,
Probably not the best way to test products, but yeah, I get
well,
it. You know,
I'm sure I was the last step in the testing.
but you know
So,
that was back in the day where you can ride without seatbelts, so it's acceptable. You know.
yeah, that's right. It was the Wild West back then.
And so, you know, I just wanted the listeners to hear from you about the sodium bromide kind of, I would say, debate, or I don't know how to phrase that, but I've heard from different people about the negative effects of it, and I'm glad you cleared it up for the listeners from your end of it. And everyone, like I said at the beginning when we're off air, a lot of pool guys are sodium bromide pool guys still, and it's one of their
Hmm.
go-to because it's highly effective, and I use it too. And I know that when I get to a pool where there's an algae outbreak where nothing else is working, that's going to work effectively. You know, that's one thing there that I think the listeners could gain from that is that the EPA wouldn't register it if it was not a safe product.
No, it's pretty substantial, the amount of safety studies and even efficacy studies that we have to go through to get something registered, with both federal and California EPA. California EPA is the toughest, but we have to have stability studies, safety studies, toxicology studies, all these things. That's why it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to get something registered. So no, they're pretty. Any EPA registered product is pretty well vetted. But at the same time, we do our most popular products are sodium bromide based. So we are biased. What we try to do though is anytime there's if you ask me about competitors, something that I know nothing about, I won't comment on it. If I know something about it, I will always make sure to give the science behind it. We believe in, education being a really, big important thing, especially for our industry. And it's one of the things the company was built on was basically Jock going around and teaching pool chemistry to service pros.
Yeah, and you mentioned the other sodium bromide products to carry. I think one that is highly underrated is the No More Problems. Maybe it's not misspelled on purpose. That one is a liquid sodium bromide product, and I really like it. For some reason, I think maybe because it's a liquid, hasn't really caught on as an algicide, so to speak. But
Right.
that's one product that you do carry that I really think is underrated at your company.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, no more. We always say, if everybody used no more problems, we wouldn't have to make the rest of this stuff. And that's a little bit tongue in cheek. But yeah, the no more problems is a really interesting thing. I'm sure probably what a lot of your listeners do is they actually probably use yellow treat as a preventative, and we kind of say, yeah, you probably don't want to do that. But when you're out there and you're on a route, you just kind of figure out what works best. And for a lot of people, that's yellow treat, that's fine. But the No More Problems is actually geared towards prevention. It has a few ingredients that none of the rescue algicides, like yellow treat or swamp treat or any of those have, because it's designed to kind of last longer. The idea of it being a liquid is just to make it easier to add to the pool. But yeah, we actually guarantee that if you use No More Problems in the pool and you get algae, you give us a call, we'll send you free algicide. So if that's, you say, I had a pool and No More Problems, it got algae, then we say, cool, what kind of algae? We'll send you an algicide for free. So we pride ourselves on selling stuff that works. So yeah, I can't recommend using No More Problems enough. I don't know how why Jock left off the E when he developed that, but he would sometimes tell people it's because the product's made in Pyru and we don't know how to spell out there.
That's funny. I know the swamp treat works. I did a video, I guess 4 or 5 years ago. I lose track. I've been doing this so long. And I had a green swamp. I had actually a swamp pool that I used it in, and highly effective. And I think you market that mainly towards those green pool cleanups, right? That's why it's called swamp treat, obviously.
Yeah, the story behind the name of that's actually pretty cool. It was a customer who did that. We were experimenting with this Yellow Treat² formula for a long time. We started to crack the code on getting chlorine reading, but also noticing that this other couple of ingredients, what we're now calling chlorine boost, really made a product a lot stronger. When we were sending out samples of it, because a lot of times we'll reach out to the pool service guys and say, give us, we have this product, give us your worst pool, let's see how well this stuff really works before we bring it out. And the customer said, wow, this stuff works so well, you should call it Swamp Treat. And we were like, oh, that's actually a great name. So that's how we came up with the name of it. Someone had just a horrible pool, and he's like, yeah, cleared it up in about a day. And he goes, call it Swamp Treat, because that was a swamp I used it in. I was like, well, yeah, that's a great name for it. Let's do that.
Yeah, not only is it a catchy name, but it actually works. So
yeah,
it's a product that twofold, I guess. Now you make other products. Now this one is interesting. I haven't tried this one yet. I actually have this in my garage. I'll give it a shot. But it's the Treat, the calcium hardness reducer. Now, in the industry, it's pretty much known that the only way to reduce calcium hardness is to drain some water out of the pool.
right.
But this product is a product that is supposed to reduce calcium hardness without going into anything proprietary. How does this thing actually work to reduce the calcium hardness?
The only thing proprietary is the actual ingredients in it, but what it basically does is it starts to bind the calcium molecules to make them a little bit easier to capture in your filtration system. Now, it's not like a flock or something that really clumps everything together, so it's not like you add the Treat and then bam, your calcium drops. It takes a little bit of time, and it depends on your filter. We recommend it for DE filters, but it'll basically bind to a certain percentage of the calcium in the water, and then over about a week, it will slowly start building up in the filter itself. So when you backwash, on average, we see about 200 to 400 parts per million in hardness drop. If there's scale in the pool, often it'll remove the scale. And so occasionally customers will say, I used it, my calcium hardness didn't drop very much, but all the scale came off the pool. And since the calcium hardness didn't raise, it indicates that it'll actually pull the scale off the walls and then trap it in the filter. So, but yeah, that's all. It's just reacting with the calcium to make a larger molecule that can get caught in the DE filter.
And you said that DE filters are recommended because of the better filtration of that filter. Is that why it works better?
Yeah. So in sand filter, it doesn't particularly work unless you have a filter aid or something, or you actually add DE to the sand. In cartridge, it's same kind of thing. You need something to kind of get the microns down so that it would that'll actually catch it. So a lot of customers have had success using that fibrous cellulose filter aid to actually help get it captured. But we consistently see the best results with DE filters because, of course, it's way down there in microns.
I wonder if one of those multi-cyclone pre-filters will work with a cartridge filter to help with this product, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough data on customers trying that and actually getting back to us and saying, hey, we figured this out. If your listeners would like to try it and, send us a message, let us know. Again, with the Treat as well, we back you with a guarantee. So if you've used Treat and you run into a pool that doesn't work, you just give us a call and we can give you a refund. But that would be great. We would love to know if that works.
I actually have a pool in my route. I'm just thinking of it has that multi-cyclone filter, and it's a cartridge filter, and the calcium hardness, California, 500,
yeah,
600.
That's right.
Not unheard of. So, because those pre-filters really filter out a lot of chemicals too. Mm-hmm. They'll actually filter out DE, which is pretty amazing. Your other stain products, which I've used also, and it seems like everyone has a stain product. Every company makes one of one form or another, and yours is more of a granular stain treatment still. It's not like a liquid like a lot of the other companies have moved towards. And why is the granular more effective, or why is the granular still being used by United Chemical?
So when you're talking about most chemicals, so like you're mentioning manufacturers that use liquid. And this isn't always the case, but with a lot of chemicals, what that is that liquid chemical is basically a granular salt dissolved into water. So you're pretty much getting a diluted chemical in some form of fashion. That might not be a big deal, but when you're dealing with something like a stain, which usually is one, it's hard to get to because it's on the surface. Two is usually it takes a lot of chemical energy to remove. We just tend to go with concentrated formulas. There's benefits to having a liquid, and sometimes in the way that you can apply it, but almost all our formulas, we try to make sure that it only takes one dose to do it, and the best way to do that is to just make it as concentrated as possible with the particular formulas. So that's why we tend to stick to granulars for a lot of our products. Plus, for pool guys, it's a lot easier to store and transport granular products than rather than liquid. We try to think about, what the pool guy would like to have on their truck rather than what might look pretty in a bottle.
Yeah, I agree with the granular is much easier to transport and to use per se.
Hmm.
So let's talk about the Hamilton index itself. Now in California, I think this index is very useful. I'm probably not going to go into extreme detail about how it compares to the LSI index, but you can definitely touch on that.
Sure.
What is a Hamilton index? If people haven't heard of it, there's three main indexes that people think about when they think about the pool industry, and the LSI seems to be in the lead, I guess, as far as everyone referring to that.
Right.
And the Hamilton index has been around for a while. Why don't you go over that for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So, a lot of people think probably our flagship products are Yellow Treat and No More Problems, but really it's the Hamilton Index, which is ironic because it's not something that we can monetize or do monetize. But the Hamilton Index was developed by Jock, who, like I mentioned, was a pool guy, and it stemmed from him, taking chemistry, and he had this idea about the cyanuric acid originally. He started to notice that in pools that were perfectly balanced according to the LSI, because that's what's used in the industry even back then predominantly, they would still have problems, particularly in staining and scale. And you would go, wait, if I have it balanced according to the index, and it's doing something that the index isn't predicting, then there's got to be something wrong with the index. So he developed his own index, the Hamilton index, from the ground up. And the main difference, it's almost opposite of the LSI. The LSI, if you had to sum it up, is low pH, high alkalinity, right? I mean, your alkalinity is like 80 to 120, sometimes higher, and then your pH is very low. That, when you look at the history of the LSI, that makes a lot of sense because it was developed in the 30s for municipal pipes and things like that. And, talk about pool chemistry in the 30s, no one was thinking about that. So it was a great way to try to get something for balancing pools, but it was kind of hammering a square peg in a round hole. Jock came around in he was doing pools in the like 60s and 70s, and noticed that it didn't quite work. And so the Hamilton Index is purely about pools and addresses the differences. Pools are open to the air; they're not under pressure like pipes. We actually care about different things versus pipes. I mean, have you ever looked in your pipes to see staining? No, the LSI is predominantly concerned about scale. It's not exposed to sunlight, so chlorine burn is totally different if you're using chlorine or chloramines for pipes and them in pools. So yeah, so that's kind of where the history of where it came from. And basically, like any index, it's just trying to predict when are you going to get something to happen. In the Hamilton Index, it's looking at stains and scale and chlorine burn, trying to preserve as much chlorine as possible. We actually have a whole chemistry course on our site about it, because again, you know, you're getting me into the chemistry realm, and I'm a huge chemistry nerd, so I could go on for hours. But it's basically that. It's developed for pools to help prevent staining and scale. And the reason why it works really well is, especially out here in California, we have hard water, and so our pools tend to stain and scale a lot. So the whole idea of the index is you would drop your alkalinity to compensate, because alkalinity measures in part carbonates, and if you look at chemistry, calcium and metals, if they react with carbonates, become insoluble and stain. So that's kind of the shortcut of the whole chemistry course. So if you keep a lower alkalinity, the less your pool will stain.
I'm looking at the chart here, and you measure total hardness along with calcium hardness. And what's the reasoning behind that in the Hamilton index?
Yeah, so calcium hardness is okay. It used to not be in the index, but we added it as a guesstimate. Total hardness is better because it gives you a clear idea of everything in the pool that could precipitate or come out on the surface. So in general, total hardness, which is measures manganese, also in the water and other stuff, will trend with calcium hardness, but it's not exact. Like, you could have a pool with really low calcium hardness, really high total hardness. So it's just a more inclusive test, so we recommend that. But what are you going to probably find on your truck? You're probably going to find calcium hardness, and so we wanted to make it more usable by guesstimating. And on average, they're about 30% within each other. So that's kind of what the values are. And the formula for the Hamilton index is actually very complex. Jock also was not only a genius for his chemistry, but also for how he could educate and present information. So he figured out a way just to put in a chart, so that way you can just glance at it and know exactly where you need to balance. So he made it very, very user-friendly in addition to everything.
Yeah, the listeners can find the chart on your site. If they go to unitedchemical.com, there's actually a clickable link to the Hamilton index. And if you pull up the PDF and look at it, like I've been doing, and I've used it before out here in California, so I know it's really effective. And a lot of California guys probably use the Hamilton index without even knowing they're using it, because they get everything in balance with the high calcium. They are keeping the alkalinity low, and
Right.
pH is a little bit higher. It's kind of like one of those things. Some states maybe don't deal with it, but when I say California, people have no idea of how bad our calcium hardness is here.
Oh no, I joke we can't wash our cars because they'll break the windows. It's so hard out here. So yeah, out here we're in Ventura County. I think it's like 600-700 coming out of the tap of just calcium hardness. So we definitely have a hard water out here. So
Yeah, I'll just tell you quickly. I had my sinks always get clogged up, so I changed that little screen in front, a little thing you unscrew.
yeah.
And I've actually unscrewed one before, and it wouldn't go back on, and that's because there was so much calcium, it just pretty much ruined the whole faucet. I had to replace it. So it's
Oh yeah.
one of those things where we deal with this. And so, if listeners want to look into the Hamilton Index for certain areas of the country, I think it is a viable index to work off of, and there's a lot of science behind it, I think, that United Chemical has put into it. So I know I've thrown out the website a lot here already, but of course, to learn more, listeners can go to your website, and maybe you can throw it
Right.
out there again.
Yeah, and you can go to unitedchemical.com. You can click on the for business section, which we're building out, but it's free. We have free education on there. Like, we have a chemistry course there, which kind of breaks down, takes you all the way from, I slept through all of high school chemistry to, okay, I understand how how pH and alkalinity influence each other and saturation points and everything. That being said, it is not like taking a full chemistry course. It's meant to be much more engaging in short chunks. So the full course is maybe a little bit over an hour in kind of 5 to 10 minute sections. So it kind of makes it a little bit more digestible. But yeah, if you go through the course, and you'll be a chemistry nerd just like me.
Well, I appreciate your time talking about your products and going over the sodium bromide. I guess I call it debate. I'll use that term.
Yeah, sure, sure. No, I mean it's fine. And hey, we're criticism and debate is good. It helps the industry. It's just sometimes you have to be careful of agendas and things like that. Am I getting the science or am I getting marketing? And us as manufacturers, we have a vested interest, but at the same time, we also have a responsibility that we're trying to elevate the industry, not take advantage of it. So thank you for this opportunity. Love what you're doing with providing resources, and we're anything we can do to help the education in the industry. It's great for us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I hope you found this podcast helpful, and I think the new Yellow Treat² formula is a great thing for the industry because it'll eliminate a lot of the user error with the sodium bromide by overdosing the pool or maybe not adding enough chlorine to compensate for it. The fact that it has chlorine boost, you don't have to really worry too much about having the chlorine, be zeroed out in the pool and having a worse problem to come back to really makes the product much more improved. And you can definitely learn more about their products on their website. And I think we touched on some of their key products here in this podcast. If you're looking for other podcasts that I've recorded on other chemistry subjects or products, you can just go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and on the banner there's a podcast icon. Click on that and that'll drop you down to the menu where you can see the other podcasts there. There's also a search box there so you can actually search for keywords if you were searching for something in particular that I talked about. With over 650 podcasts and growing, I too use the search box when I'm trying to find something quickly for somebody. They'll ask me about something I talked about. I can't remember when I recorded it, and so I'll use that search box to find something. So it's a handy resource to look at the previous or the prior podcasts, I should say, that I have up there. And if you're in the industry and you want to enhance your business, definitely consider my coaching program at poolguycoaching.com. And there's a lot of great benefits for joining there, including a discount on your general liability insurance. Again, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.